Hello, my name's Mike Adams and I'm Chief Executive of Purple, and welcome to our first Disability and Customer Service e-tutorial. We live in unprecedented times, and never has it been more important to think about good customer service for disabled people in whichever sector you work. And to deliver good customer service for disabled people means you as an organisation need to support your staff. And I hope these sets of modules that we are presenting to you will help you as an organisation and your staff to address issues around the disabled customer and ensuring in these times they have the best experience they can. And Purple is responsible for Purple Tuesday, for which many of you will know, which was the call to action for organisations to improve the customer experience. And in these times, what we're doing is repurposing Purple Tuesday and providing you and your staff with a bite-size look into how customer service for disabled people can be addressed. So today we are going to look and cover a number of modules. Why a good experience for disabled customers should matter to your business and your staff. Top tips on disability language and etiquette. Top tips for frontline staff serving disabled customers. Top tips to support your teams who work in office environments. Top tips to make your website more accessible, and never has that been so important as the gateway into your organisation than now. And then finally, some key takeaways for your organisation and your staff. So who is Purple? We're a disability organisation that see the world differently, an organisation that see disability as a value, whether it's in terms of disabled employees or disabled customers. And we support disabled people, and we support organisations and their staff to go on their disability inclusion journey. And Purple as an organisation provides a range of training, audit and consultancy products which are bespoke to individual organisations, because quite rightly they're at different places on their disability journey. And as I've said, Purple is the creator of Purple Tuesday, which is the change programme for organisations addressing disabled customers and their experience. And it's incredibly important when we talk about the customer experience that we're talking about changes that can be made in exceptional times, like the period we are in now, but when we come through this crisis, can be embedded and remain 365 days a year. But it's important that we define disability. And I know from my conversations with all sorts of organisations the power of the wheelchair symbol in raising the profile of disabled people and disability. But actually, do you know it only accounts for 7% of the disability population? The term disability covers a wide range of different conditions and impairments, far too many to name individually, but there is a broad legal definition in the UK which is as follows: a physical or mental impairment that has a substantial and long-term negative effect on your ability to do normal daily activities. And that is taken from the Equality Act 2010, and I promise you is the only piece of legal jargon that we will use in these tutorials. The reality is, rather than looking to legal definitions, I'm asking you as organisations and staff to apply common sense. Every customer is important. Every customer will have different needs, and we're asking you to think about that in the context of people who may happen to have a disability. In order to warm us up and get us going and to learn a little, what we've done is created a disability quiz. And thinking about it, I might have already given you one or two of the answers in my introduction. So this will determine how well you've already listened to me as we've started. This is a light-hearted way for you to understand some of the key metrics, some of the key statistics in relation to disability. And if you are watching it on your own, be honest with yourself in terms of your decisions. And if you're watching it as a group, ensuring that social distancing is applied, then I give you absolute permission to put me on pause. And I will do that myself by putting myself on pause by drinking my tea in between questions. So, question 1. What percentage of the UK population have an impairment or disability? Is it A, 11%, B, 6%, or C, 22%? My first sip of my tea. The answer is C, 22%. Or to put it in another way, that is over 1/5 of the population. And what I say to hotels, what I say to restaurants, what I say to shops, what I say to businesses is, can you afford to ignore 1/5 of your potential customers? And the answer has to be no. So the answer to that question is 22%, over 1/5 of the population has a disability. Question 2, which is what percentage of children, and we're defining this as under 18 in the UK, have an impairment or disability? Is it A, 26%, B, 7%, or C, 59%? And I will tell you all the times that we as an organisation have used this quiz, this is probably the question that most people, if they get any wrong, get wrong. The answer to this question is B, 7%. And in some ways, it makes common sense because we know, and I don't think this is in the quiz question, so I can say it, we know that 83% of disabled people acquire their disability over their lifetime. And therefore, you would expect there to be a higher number in adults than children. We know medical advances have made real progression in being able to do things while individuals are pregnant that minimise the risk of some impairments. And we know that for some disabilities, it may not be diagnosed until later in life. And of course, the big one in this is mental health, but also for someone who worked in higher education for a long time, dyslexia. Although individuals may recognise that they have issues with coping strategies in place, it may not be until they get to university, for example, and they have to do their year-end, year 3 dissertation, that they realise that they have issues. So the answer to question 2 is B, 7%. Question 3. What is the percentage of disabled people with a hidden impairment? Is it A, 80%, B, 50%, or C, 45%? The answer to the question is A, 80%. 4 out of 5 disabled people have hidden impairments. If I walk into a shopping centre, to an office, to a restaurant, it doesn't take long for people to recognise and acknowledge that I have a disability. But actually 4 out of 5 people will walk into those same places and those frontline staff will not necessarily know that the individual has an impairment, disability, and has additional needs. So we need to rethink our perceptions of disability and therefore need to rethink how we approach all customers in order that we open up the opportunity that if they have additional needs, then they can have those additional needs met. Question 4 is, what is the purchasing power of disabled people across the UK? That is the consumer spending power of disabled people where they are in a family. So it's the family disposable income where there is a disabled person in that family. Is the answer A, 120 million, B, 153 billion, or C, 249 billion? All huge numbers, but the answer to the question is C, 249 billion pounds per annum. And we understand from government data that that number is rising at 14% per annum. And therefore, the disability market is significant. Yet only 10% of organisations have a detailed strategy about how they access that market. And as you will see throughout these e-tutorials, actually the solution to the disabled customer in many ways is straightforward. And it is about the first conversation. It's about feeling confident to ask the right questions and feeling confident around language and etiquette. Question 5, which I think I've already answered. So we will see whether people have listened to me. What is the percentage of wheelchair users in the UK? That should read rather than the UK, just to spot the mistake. Is it A, 10%, B, 26%, or C, 8%? And the answer is C, 8%. Less than 10% of disabled people are wheelchair users, but yet the worldwide symbol for disability is the wheelchair. And so it's not surprising that when we talk to businesses, we talk to organisations, their immediate thought when we start talking about disability is wheelchair users. But I always say, that's absolutely fine, and how do you support wheelchair users? But also, how do you support the other 92% of disabled people? Question 6. What percentage of disabled people have walked out of an organisation or clicked away from a website due to issues around accessibility? Is it A, 75%, B, 65%, or C, 55%? And while you're thinking about your answer to this question, I want to raise an important point about language and etiquette. And just to say, we have written the question specifically that says what percentage of disabled people have walked out of an organisation. It is okay for wheelchair users to walk out of an organisation. So where people worry and get anxious about language and etiquette, it's all about context and it's all about positive things that are okay. We will come to things in a minute that may be not acceptable in 2020, but just to say, in terms of this question, walking out of an organisation is absolutely fine for everyone. And the answer to the question is 75%. 75% of people have walked out of an organisation or clicked away from a website due to two reasons: poor accessibility or poor customer service. In any time, but particularly in this time, can businesses afford to lose customers because they're not doing the basics right? And I think the answer on all fronts has to be no. That brings us to the end of section 1 in terms of the quiz. I wanted to make one final point that is relevant to you as an organisation or to you as individual staff members. We know that across the UK, 50% of people either have a relative who is disabled or someone in their close network. And I always say, if you think about your organisation and you think about yourself, would you ever want that relative or that person from your close network to be treated differently because they happen to have a disability? No, you wouldn't. And on that basis, it is important that the content that we are producing for you is understood, is learnt and applied. So your relative, person in your close network, has a good customer experience wherever they go. Thank you for listening.